So there are questions in both of those cases about why our state's Child, Youth and Families Department did not intervene sooner. In fact, lawmakers introduced a lot of bills to overhaul the department during our last legislative session, but many of them went absolutely nowhere. Griffin Rushton was following many of those bills for all of us, and it's surprising how few CYFD-focused bills passed, considering that a lot of them, had bipartisan support from state lawmakers.
Yeah, it is surprising for exactly that reason you just mentioned. Democrats and Republicans from both chambers seem to act like a unified front on this issue, saying that this was the year to fix the recurrent problems at CYFD. The governor recently signed 4 CYFD-focused bills into law. Those include one extending the deadline for custody hearings from 2 days to 3. It also automatically elevates cases to supervisors if a child is taken into state custody twice in 6 months. But more than 3 dozen other CYFD bills, including many bipartisan proposals, didn't cross the finish line. And longtime child welfare advocates say they're disappointed.
We had a real opportunity during the session to pass meaningful legislation, and we left every single substantive reform on the table. We are exactly where we were 90 days ago, and our children are no better off.
Marilyn Beck, who you just heard from, is the founder and executive director of New Mexico Child First Network. She's been campaigning for CYFD reform legislation for half a decade and says these 3 bills on your screen right now are the biggest losses this year. They would have removed the confidentiality clause from the Children's Code, effectively improving transparency, established an independent oversight office, and expanded a program handling cases involving newborns exposed to drugs and other addictive substances. All 3 bills crossed the halfway point during the session and even gained support from CYFD itself. But Beck suggests getting past Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham was always going to be their biggest hurdle.
We heard directly from the governor where in her executive order that she wants to be the person to really fix this, as she said, dysfunctional agency.
She's referencing an executive order signed by the governor about halfway through the session. It immediately restructured the department into 3 major departments, something she believes will increase transparency and oversight. The CYFD spokesperson confirmed today they are still working to hire those new department heads, but an advisory council has already been appointed to oversee the transition here.
And we've talked a lot about the legislation that would have created a civil rights division within our AG's office. CYFD reform was connected to that bill, and it did reach the governor's desk, but that's as far as it made it.
It did. She didn't sign it before the deadline, which means she just pocket vetoed it. Now, Beck believes state lawmakers shifted their focus to that bill once it was clear the governor would not support direct CYFD reform legislation, but suggests that the CYFD aspects of that bill factored into her veto. Now, it is worth mentioning lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, even New Mexico's congressional leaders, have spoken out against the governor's veto of that.
So with all this in mind, could CYFD reform bills still get some support when we go back to the Roundhouse next year?
It is possible. Beck says that the increased transparency bill was supported by the governor and the department and believes that that could have a shot next year. Now, it is worth noting that the governor does get to choose what lawmakers debate during next year's 30-day session.
All right, we'll see if she puts it on the call. Griffin, thanks so much.